Okay, so let me show you what an actual DBQ that I wrote looks like. This is 1, 2, 3, 4.5 pages. This is really hard to read. I can try to read this. Okay, I can try to go through this and read and like explain each paragraph by paragraph or like line by line. So we have here context. Finally, the world was free. Monumental loss of life. Massively also the U.S. economy. FDR's Lend-Lease program meant that many American factors finally reactivated to a far greater extent than this New Deal, which attempted to remedy the Great Depression. I think if I just started myself there, I would have had more than enough context. It would just like it probably skipped all the rest of this. Consequently, but either way, consequently by the war's end, the US firmly found itself as a new economic superpower, all thanks to wartime demand causing the rampant growth of its industries, seemingly indeed for all. And that's the complexity. So what's my point? However, despite this economic enormous revitalization, the legacy of these actions is consequential changes. Despite the presence of new technologies being developed, thanks to economic growth, this growth more significantly perpetuated pre-existing discrimination and federal power rise. That was me kind of dumping something in. That's a strange thesis, I'm going to be honest. Anyways, so this last part here is the thesis. These 3 lines here. I'm pretty sure for this context, you would have only needed like to mention Lend-Lease, and then we've just Lend-Lease, and I think they would have accepted that. We've seen the AP World 21 DBQ, that was pretty vague. Okay, let me check. Who still managed to stick around? Okay, just you guys. Sweet. You guys get more help, I guess. But I will be recording this anyways. It's just kind of a mess. Okay, so this is my first paragraph. I start with what I call the minor argument, the counter argument. My minor argument in this case is the growth that this change was inconsequential. Suddenly, new economic prosperity brought with it new technologies. For example, washing machines and fridge desserts became common. That's all I have for that description, by the way. Washing machines and fridge desserts became common. The prompt, let me pull that up so we have a basis of what the heck I'm talking about. So this is the DBQ that I wrote, and I did get a 5 on this exam. So unless you want to tell me that I got 0 on this DBQ, yeah, it's probably okay. So it's rather the extent to which economic growth led to changes in the United States society in the period from 1940 to 1970. So this is APUSH, but the skills should remain constant either way. The only thing you need to understand is like the logical chain. So let's go back to document 3. What was my point? Fridge desserts and washers became common. Wash machine, fridge desserts, that's all I needed to make an entire argument. So what was my point? Prosperity enabled the change of new technologies. Without this growth, there would be no demand. That's my proof. Economic growth, stimulate demand, new technologies. However, the perspective of this document of a suburban mother implies that she is white and middle class, limiting her perspectives to she would rarely, if ever, meet minorities. That's my perspective. What can't we make from this document? Okay, she's a suburban mother, probably white middle class. We don't know if this applied to other people. Furthermore, her mention of TV alludes to great homogenization of mass culture thanks to mass media, highlighting another effect of economic growth, since TVs were a middle class product. So in this case, I think I was trying to go for complexity. In this case, that was I think the complexity I was trying to go for was like multiple variables or something. But I was trying to introduce a new concept, something that I thought was kind of important. Yeah, it hasn't ended yet because I'm talking about another DBQ and I wrote a DBQ. So I'm like super out of it right now, and I'm gonna go downstairs and like collapse or something. I don't know. But anyways, my point is that the perspective is that this is an example of limitation. We can't say that this is universal. Actually, are you even in? Okay. Yeah, hopefully this should be recorded. If I'm recording, if it's not recorded, I guess I'll have another section. Yeah, the 22 AP World DBQ did never mention China. 2022 AP World did not mention China, even though it alluded to Africa and Asia. My assumption is that they were trying to be merciful and let you reference the Opium Wars. I don't know. Okay, moving on. Likewise, hold on. I skipped the page. Car advertising encourages Americans to buy cars. Document 4. Yet again, this is a product aimed at the white middle class suburbanite. But so too does this mention of over 250,000 families with 2 cars. It indicates also that this advertisement and these cars further homogenize culture. So this is my other variable that I'm trying to bring in. Homogenization of culture. Furthermore, the purpose of this advertising encourages the purchase of cars via the fear of missing on the hottest new fashionable item, i.e. cars, highlighting the impact of corporations on cultural homogenization. This selling, however, only occurred by economic growth. So we have here some sourcing, some complexity, or at least my attempt at complexity, and then I just loop it back with like, this is still economic. I'm still trying to address like this one economic point. But I also want to address that this economic growth had cultural impacts, and that's slightly more complicated. You could easily write this essay without ever addressing culture, but I chose to address culture, the impact of the way that new technologies impacted culture. In order to do new technologies, it was economic growth stimulate demand for new technologies, and these new technologies were also caused homogenization of culture. So it's like three. Is anyone speaking right now? I'm speaking right now. Am I not audible? Am I not audible or something? Yeah, I'm speaking right now, so I don't know what you mean. So this is me trying to address a different aspect. This is kind of risky on the exam if you can't write fast. So you should really only be aiming for complexity if you're at 6 out of 7 already consistently in like most DBQs, if you can still make that extra time. But even if you're not in for complexity on the exam, that does not mean you can't still be a history major, or you can't still end up as one. So just like even as a history major, you will probably not be writing essays live like this. You would still be looking at them in paragraphs. This is not for APU. This is APUSH. I don't know why you can't hear, man. Are you in the chat? Yeah, you are there. So even if you're not gonna be a history major, anyways, it's still like important to understand the complexities of this. I'm speaking now as public policy. I'm speaking now as someone who's trying to get into public policy. It can get pretty convoluted when you start looking at public matters and public issues. This is an example of it. Like, even though it's just economic growth, even though it's just technologies, even though it's just like people buying more things, we can still ask, okay, what effect does this have further? We have this single effect, we have this single cause, but how does that effect become a cause in its own way? Okay, so I've been alluding to it throughout this paragraph that maybe there's some limitations with this argument, and this is where I start talking about those limitations. However, only the suburban middle class saw significant change thanks to new innovation technologies. For minorities, discrimination, whether reminiscent of the yellow peril of World War II or the South's Jim Crow laws, remained in several facets of the American life. Okay, so I forgot to define this. Oops. Let me check. There's like something I forgot to address. Oh, yes. This is supposed to be my first body paragraph. This homogeneity is also seen in the organization man, which mentions the well-known as a keenly aware of the commonalities. And this is where the part where I loop back into my main reason, economic growth. Without economic growth to cause the rise of suburbs, this degree of homogenization would not have occurred. So even though I want to address it with a different effect, I still need to loop back to my reason. Furthermore, the roadmap of Doc 7, as well as the illusion of TV in Doc 3, highlight the contextual importance of innovations in supplementing this homogenization by connecting Americans. However, none of this connection could have arisen without economic growth to enable the place of cause and TV. So I'm doing two things at the same time. I am having documents speak to each other, and I'm also analyzing another variable, I think. I wouldn't be able to say for sure, but I just like, from a historical thinking perspective, I still think there's something that's fine to do. Just because it shows like I can understand the underlying mechanics and processes of a historical event. Okay, now we can go back to what I was actually talking about. So this is I said earlier that we should not be name dropping. I screwed that up here. Whoops. I really hope my OBS is picking up my audio. Let me make sure. Okay, it is. We're good. Okay. So, as mentioned, for example, a CLD prohibits African Americans and Asians from living in the area. That's it. That's the description. As mentioned before, white suburbans had little contact, and this deed indicates that this was often a conscious decision by landlords and families to discriminate, demonstrating the exclusivity of economic change. So my point is that this shows how economic change was excluded people. Ostensibly, and I can't read this, much of this housing discrimination occurred due to government district investigations, which graded housing zones and generally graded black territories as lower quality. However, discrimination is not limited to merely zoning. Oh yeah, so that's contextualization. That's the underlying mechanics and processes. I'm asking the question, okay, why and how did this occur? My answer is, how did this occur? Government district investigations. I think this was something off curriculum, technically. It was probably from an APUSH teacher. So now I'm talking about discrimination being manifesting another way, zoning. I'm talking about another way. Road to Ruin mentioned that a new highway would cut across numerous black communities in Nashville. By the way, the American highways were like terrible for this. They were really awful. It's kind of disheartening to see. Okay. But anyways, thus much like Good Age Muckracker, this journal is exposing the careless attitudes towards African Americans whose communities were being damaged, sometimes for some reason demolished so that other Americans, the aforementioned white class, as well as companies, could continue to prosper, finding that economic change was limited. Oops, I forgot to explain that. So this is me arguing ruthlessly with the documents. Whether or not you agree with me, it's I'm just trying to get my points, man. And there's a lot to talk about with how it's like road networks at this time. Oh, actually, is this 1960? Oh god, yeah, I can include 1960. Okay, the reason why I specified 1960 is because I wrote a 8-page report on the ESEA of 1965. If you ever want to complain about No Child Left Behind, ESEA 1965 was its grandfather. Okay, where was I? We were here. Okay. Ultimately, this visibly disproportionate way of life lit the powder keg of the civil rights movement, for blacks sought their own prosperity in the American dream. Okay, here is my complexity. I'm trying to relate this. I'm trying to explain the legacy of this impact. I'm trying to show that I understand that this isn't just like an isolated event, that this has real impact. This has real meaning and impact. Okay, and now that I get even more convoluted, the television that brought homogeneity for white suburbanites would now be a communicative goal like none other that blacks would marvelously in the pursuit of change, highlighting another use for now common television, which became affordable thanks to growing economy. Okay, I'm still relating to this argument. Growing economy leads to innovations. TV, homogenization, and now we have it being used by the African American community to try to bring change. That's complicated, but it's what happens. Yeah, I mentioned it's a communicative tool. I didn't really explicitly explain that, but I don't think I would have needed to explain more. I can't confirm if this got complexity at all. I just know I got a 5 on the exam, but even if it didn't get complexity, I still think that if I showed this to someone in a history course, they would be able to see what I'm trying to do at least. But they'd probably be kind of annoyed at the disorganization. But I think it still makes sense. Okay, moving on, we have, as before World War II, growing economy, continued expansion of federal power. This one's just me kind of going out there because I realized, I never used document 1. So I just threw this in and I was like, GI Bill 1. Oh, that's interesting. Oh wow, a national system of instant defense highways. Who used that again? Oh yeah, the federal government made that. So I figured, I guess the federal government's power grew, huh? So this is pretty self-explanatory. Framed Delano Roosevelt's GI Bill of Rights enabled federal loans to veterans. Simple enough. Thus, unlike the occupation of Washington, by World War I veterans, this bill seeks to repay those soldiers. So now I'm making another connection, which I didn't really explain. Oh well. However, this bill was a federal one that uses federal wealth, demonstrating the continuing rise of federal power. So my point is that I specify that's still economic because it's federal wealth that's allowing it. Likewise, federal roads expanded this time. This is literally all I needed for this document. That's basically it. Anyways, being a national road network, this indicates the federal government used it. However, this extended road network simultaneously highlights the reason for the demand for cars, i.e. the roads for tourism. So now connected that back to that other document about cars. You have these highways, people using these cars, which, by the way, the more roads you build, the more people will come. This is kind of disputed, but most traffic engineers will say that the expand highway lanes actually worsens congestion. It can be debated, but most traffic engineers will say, yeah, that's the case. There's other ways to mitigate that issue, for example, with toll roads, but this is off topic. But there is a reason why there is an entire sector of the economy and there are people with PhDs who dedicate their lives to just researching the transportation economics. Anyways, I relate this to a third document because I was just off the wall, I guess. Presence of Road to Ruin, as well as the Cold War, forcing this network to also be used for defense, indicating an uneasy truth that much of this growth was for federal influence in the name of a conflict. So now I'm getting more complicated. I'm talking about the underlying motivations. I'm just saying, it wasn't just for corporations for cause. We also see it's for the federal government to grow themselves as well and ensure the strength. And if African Americans lost that, so be it. So now I'm relating that back to the second reason. African Americans were locked down. Lastly, this federal power would live on through Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, which introduced such federal programs as Medicaid and then general education funding. Actually, that may have been correct, but I don't think... Hold on. Let's look this up. Oh no. I don't think he did that. Okay, so this is not relevant. This is not relevant at all. So I'm not going to talk about this. So this is technically incorrect. I didn't know at the time though, but it's technically incorrect. Anyways, moving on. Much like the good age of the past, the era of 1949 to 70 mainly changed only an exclusive group of people. This time through the supply and demand for nanotechnologies. That was just me being AP Macro Econ because I'm annoying. On the other hand, this change really benefited minorities, who largely remained a secondary interest, while simultaneously the federal government continued its growth. So that's my thesis. Two sentences, that's fine. Eventually, and now we talk about the legacy. Eventually, while Reagan's conservative stance saw the shrinking of wealth programs and argument for falling federal power, his military growth indicated that he too would grow the U.S. federal government, albeit in a different manner. How many pages do you get? Let me see. I got at least 9 pages. So at least 9, probably 10 at least. Anyways, this is me going even more ridiculous about a point that I did not bring up. A point that was not a reason, but I still brought up anyway. Today, the homogenization of cultures continues with the internet, which has enabled remarkable intercultural exchange as well. And the influence of African American rap highlights, to some extent, their rising cultural power. However, the legacy of discrimination continues today for many, as seen in black names being discriminated against, police brutality towards blacks, and mass shootings. Finally, Joe Biden's infrastructure bill seeks to expand Amtrak, a present-day continuation of the expanding federal power. Oh wow, I actually wrote that. Yeah, anyways, so was I trying to go for complexity in this essay? Yes. Was I trying to go for it in multiple ways? Yes. Because I don't really believe in there's one way to get complexity. I usually try to just several. Well, it's been a while, hasn't it? Okay, I can address other Q. I think I should leave other Q for a different session because it's kind of tiring. So I think that'll close the day for now.